This is Cassone with the Conquest of Trebizond, made by Marco del Buono Giambarti and Apollonio di Tomasio in the 1460s. I've selected this work to add to the Italian Renaissance. To address the physical properties, the object is made of tempera and gold and silver on wood. The technique used to make it was painting and gilding with gold leaf or thin sheets of gold. It is painted. The size of the work is 9.5 by 77 by 32.875 inches, and it is roughly the size of a twin-size bed. Standing next to this work would make you feel awestruck by its detail and size, and likely small next to such a large work of art. The form of this work is best described as naturalistic, as the figures and objects resemble what we would find in nature. Space is handled with linear perspective, creating the illusion of depth in the paintings as seen on the front panel where the ships and castle are depicted. Objects farther in the distance appear smaller and more faded than closer objects. The artists also utilized chiaroscuro in order to develop the idea of a three-dimensional landscape by shading one side of the buildings, people, and hillsides. Line appears in the protruding side pieces, which have geometric patterns on them that create a pattern on the sides of the box. Not only do these lines that are carved onto the sides of the box create a sense of repetition for the viewer, but they also frame the image as well and serve to lead the onlooker's eye to the panels. Most of the composition is naturalistic as seen by the natural-looking forms and landscapes. In contrast, the pomegranate leaves and the emblem on the side and back are a simple design that juxtapose the busy landscape of the other panels. The texture is diverse as illustrated by the tactile textures carved into the sides of the box as well as the perceived textures of the panels. For example, the buildings appear sharp and rough, while the people are organic and appear soft and smooth. Color is handled in many ways, as seen on the different sides of the box. On the back panel, for example, the colors are very natural and dull, and all the lines are very simple because this side of the box was not seen by viewers, as this side faced the foot of the bed. The front and side, in contrast, were visible by passerby. Therefore, were gilded and had very vibrant and contrasting colors. The contrast between the tone of the colors created the illusion of depth by depicting three-dimensional structures such as a building in the background of the front panel. Subject matter of this work is now thought to be the defeation of the Ottoman army. The signs that reveal this subject are the clothing worn by the troops in the scene, the Strozzi family emblem, and the scene on the landscape of Constantinople on the side panel. When this piece was first analyzed, art historians believed it to be showing the fall of the Byzantine Empire at the hands of the Ottomans, but following recent study, it is believed to be showing the fall of the Ottoman Empire by the European powers. It is believed to display a narrative of the vitality of the people of Florence, rather than the fall of their neighbors to a threatening opponent. This work was created for the purpose of being used by a newly married couple to store valuable items. The people who made it believed that brides during this time period needed to bring valuable items to their marriage, or a dowry, in order to demonstrate her family's power and wealth in the city. The chests were brought through the city as the woman was led to her new home, putting on a display for the citizens the socio-economic class and wealth of the families had. Cassone were used as vessels to store and transport a newly married woman's belongings from her father's house to her new home with her husband. In this way, the cassone also represented a woman's transition from one family to another. In the case of this cassone in particular, the family emblem on the side of the piece allows the people of Florence to recognize it belonging to the Strozzi. Because a woman's main role during this time was to bear children, the cassone has a pomegranate pattern on the back that symbolized fertility to remind the woman of her role in the marriage. That most profoundly affected its creation and use were the cultural views, particularly the role women were expected to have as wives, the social and economic climate which created this perceived need to display a person's wealth, and the political unrest following the fall of the Byzantine Empire. Following the defeat of the Byzantine Empire, the people of Florence feared the rest of Europe would be overthrown as well. Wealthy families such as the Strozzi, who commissioned the piece, were afraid since they stood more to lose from their position at the top of the social hierarchy. This work illustrates the module concept of linear perspective because it utilizes this idea in order to create the illusion of three-dimensional space. In the image of Constantinople in particular, the ships are foreshortened and the converging lines of the edges of the sea recede into the background and come to a point close to the viewer. This work can be compared to the Medici Palace in Florence in the module. The two works share the fact that they were commissioned to display a prominent family's wealth, although they differ in that the palace was not an accepted form for a person to display their wealth, because money was meant to further society rather than a person's selfish goals. Whereas the Cassone was an expected display of wealth preceding marriage, the Medici Palace was against social norms. This work is also similar to Michelangelo's David because the statue of David demonstrated the city's ability to defeat an impossible enemy, the Medici family, just as the images of the Cassone reflect the idea that the people of Florence would defeat the Ottoman Empire despite their enemy's daunting power. However, in the case of the statue, the enemy had been defeated before the peace was made, whereas the Cassone is a symbol of the determination that Florence would defeat its enemy in the future.